Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances, all close to Srila Prabhupada. So today we will commence a discussion on the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, titled The Division of Faith. So this chapter is basically going to answer R and Arjun's question about in 16th chapter Krishna had made the distinction between the divine and demoniac. The divine follow the scriptures, the demoniac do not follow the scriptures. Now there may be a class of people who are in between, in the sense that they don't subscribe to the scriptures, but they may act in a way that is in accordance to the scriptures. So what will their destination be? So let's start with the verse 1. Arjun vacha ye shastra vidim utstrijya yajante shaddayanvitaha tesham nishtatuka krishna sattvam aho rajastama. Arjun inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scriptures but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, passion, or ignorance? So specifically Arjun is asking about those who, while rejecting the scriptures, coincidentally act according to some scriptural injunctions. So example is charity, that the scriptures recommend giving charity, but there are people who have no faith in the scriptures, they too give in charity. So the fact that they don't follow in the scriptures, does it make them demoniac? Or the fact that they're doing acts recommended in the scriptures, does that make them divine? And Krishna will now answer this question in the next set of verses. Verse 2. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Trivida Bhavati Shraddha Dheyanam Sa Swabhavaja Satvik Rajasi Cheva Tamsi Cheti Tam Shnu. The Supreme Personality of God has said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. So Krishna is specifically answering about what is the kind of faith that the person has if he does not subscribe to the scriptures. And the answer he is giving is that the faith will be in accordance to their nature, their swabhav, or the modes of material nature. So one may ask that where do they get these modes of material nature? So Krishna says that acquired by the embodied soul. Essentially what it means is that based on the modes one acts in a certain way, and based on those activities one is reinforced in a particular mode. So one who is in the mode of, one who takes intoxicants goes into the mode of ignorance. And one who is in the mode of ignorance is inclined to take intoxicants. So in this way, based on the previous activities, one acquires a certain mode. And based on that mode, one's faith is determined. So just to give a little preview, what Krishna will essentially say, and this is the summation of the chapter, that one, if they do not follow the scriptures, will act according to the particular mode. So one is a combination of these three modes. In some cases goodness is prominent, some cases passion, some cases ignorant, but essentially everyone's swabhav or propensity is a combination of these three modes which determines their action. Now the Vedas also, they have activities that are recommended for those in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Right? So in the previous chapter we saw, or rather the 16th chapter, we saw how there are particular qualities and activities in these modes. The difference is that if one is acting according to the scriptural injunction for the respective modes, they will be purified of that mode and make progress. So, if the scriptures have particular activities that are recommended for those in the mode of ignorance, and a person who is in the mode of ignorance follows those activities, then he will eventually be purified and move to the mode of passion. And similarly, the person will ascend the modes. On the other hand, if a person is simply performing activities according to the modes, they will always move downwards. So a person, because of prior activities, may be in the mode of goodness, but if he is performing activities whimsically, even though they are in the mode of goodness, eventually he will devolve to the mode of passion and ignorance. So this is the essential difference between acting according to the scriptures and acting whimsically. That even though the activities may be similar, that a person may be giving charity, being in the mode of goodness, or because it is recommended in the scriptures. But when a person is giving charity simply because he has a natural inclination to do so, eventually that charity will get contaminated with pride. So which is being contaminated with the mode of passion. And eventually it will get further contaminated with resentment. That why do I have to give charity? Which is mode of ignorance. So because the person is simply acting whimsically, the modes will eventually pull them down. But on the other hand, there are certain part of the scriptures that talk about meat eating, mode of ignorance. And the person may be following that and eating meat. But what the scriptures will do also is, they will give yam niyam. They will give injunctions and prohibitions. That this is the kind of meat that you can eat, this is what you cannot eat. These are the kind of prayers that you need to say. The Vedas say that before you kill an animal, you have to recite a prayer that says that just as I am killing you, I am giving you the right to kill me in future lives. So when one is performing those activities according to the Vedic injunctions, they will eventually be purified of this activity of killing animals and move to the mode of passion and so on. So following the Vedas will elevate the person. Not following the Vedas will cause the person to descend. Next verse. Verse 3. Satvanarupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata shraddha mayoyam purusho yocha shraddha sa eva saha. O son of Bharat, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. So faith, the original faith is Shuddha Sattva. It is transcendental. It is faith in Krishna and his devotees. But here Krishna is saying that the conditioned soul's faith is predicated on the mode that he has acquired. Next verse. Verse 4. Yajante satvika devan yaksharaksham sirajasa pretan bhuta ganam chanya yajante tamasa janaha. Men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons. And those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. So previous verse Krishna had said that the faith is dependent on the modes. Now based on the faith, a person will worship an object. So here Krishna is speaking about the object of worship for the three modes. And those in the mode of goodness, they will worship the demigods like Lord Brahma, or Shiva or Indra. Srila Prabhupada in the purport says the impersonalists are in the mode of goodness because they worship the Panchadevas. At least from the materialistic perspective, they are in the material mode of goodness. And those in the mode of passion, they will worship demons. So they worship demons for strength or for material benefits, demons like Kal Bhairav. And those in the mode of ignorance, they worship ghosts and spirits or dead people in crematoriums, essentially tantrics. Next verse. Verses 5 and 6. Ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante yatapo janaha dhamma hankara samyuktaha kamaraga balanvitaha karshanta sharirasthama bhutgramam acetasha mam chevanta sharirastham tan vidyasura nishchayan. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish, and who torture the material elements of the body as well as the super soul dwelling within, are known to be demons. Now, generally, austerities and penances are the ornaments of the Brahmins, the yogis, the sages, those who are aspiring to elevate themselves. But here, Krishna is re-emphasizing the point that if they do not act according to the scriptures, then they will be driven by the mood. So he is answering Arjun's question that what is the position of those who give up the scriptures, but with faith and without enjoyment, they perform some kind of worship. So here Krishna is saying that they will never be freed of lower birth in these two verses. So examples are like demons like Ravan and Hiranyakashipu. They perform severe austerities, but with personally motivated reasons. Now, they perform these activities with faith and perhaps with certain amount of detachment, but they were still condemned because they were motivated by false ego and pride. They rejected the Vedas. Essentially, they rejected Krishna. In fact, they wanted to be more as powerful or more powerful than Krishna. So Krishna also describes the symptoms that they inflict pain on the material body by these austerities, severe austerities. Like here, Hiranyakashipu was standing in fire and cold for thousands of years. Then they inflict pain on the soul. So this is contextual. Inflict on the soul by taking it away from its constitutional position. And so that is the pain of the soul. It's happy when it's in its position of being situated with respect to Krishna, and they take it away from that position, and they inflict pain on the super soul. How? By turning away from the super soul, by not listening to the instructions of the super soul, and thereby losing its mercy. So it's far better to act in the mode of ignorance, but as per the scriptures, than to whimsically act in the mode of goodness. Because here we see that a whimsical activity in the mode of goodness, which is austerity and penances, is actually far worse in terms of its impact than one who is acting in the mode of ignorance as per the scriptures. Next verse. Verse 7. Aharastvapi sarvasya trivido bhavati priyah yagyas tapas tatha danam tesham bhedamimam shunu. Even the food each person prefers is of three kinds according to the three modes of material nature. The same is true of sacrifices, austerity and charity. Now hear of the distinctions between them. So because the modes are internal Krishna is giving us external activities to identify the modes. So he is giving essentially in this chapter, he is giving 4 aspects: food, sacrifices, austerity, and charity. Because these are external activities that can be discerned, by this one can understand which mode the person is. Now, in factually speaking, one is not in is never in a single mode. So there is nobody who is, or there is almost nobody who is just in the mode of goodness or just in the mode of ignorance. Prabhupada gives this example of 3 colors that mix and mix again to create infinite number of secondary colors. Similarly, each one of us is a particular combination of these modes that are mixed and remixed. But Krishna here is giving us the qualities of the modes in themselves so that we can recognize them in ourselves and those around us. So this will be the focus of the next set of verses that Krishna speaks. Verse 8. Ayu sattva balarogya sukha priti vivardhana rasya snigdha sthira hridaya ahara satvika priya. Foods dear to those in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purifies one's existence, and gives strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. So these are the qualities of the food in the mode of goodness. So they are healthy. They increase the duration of one's life. They purify one's existence in the sense that they are not contaminated with sin, and they give strength, which means they are not the kind of food that take away one's strength like intoxicants do. So 4 qualities are defined. They are juicy. Fatty also means mild, that they are not very astringent, not very extreme in taste. Wholesome means flavorful and pleasing to the heart. Next verse. Verse 9. Katvamallavante ushna tikshna ruksha vidahinaha ahara raja yasesta dukha sokhamya pradaha. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning are dear to those in the mode of passion. Such food causes distress, misery, and disease. So these are the qualities of the food in the mode of passion. And the common superlative is very. So they are very bitter, like neem. They are very sour, very salty, very hot. Then they are very pungent, like turmeric roots or pepper. They are very drying, like hing or kodra. Because these foods, they cause internal or there are those foods that cause internal heat, and because these foods have this effect, they cause suffering, lamentation, and disease. So the suffering is suffering when eating, because it causes pain to the tongue, throat, and the stomach. Lamentation means after eating. In the future, these food cause disease and despair. Next verse. Verse 10. Yatayamam gatarasam puti paryushitam chayat uchidam api chamedhyam bhojanam tamas priyam. Food prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. So this is tamasic food. So food that is cooked for more than a prahar, 3 hours, is considered to be in the mode of ignorance, because with time the food begins to decompose and it attracts fungi and bacteria and mold. So it's considered to be in the mode of ignorance. Then food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid. So this is essentially either food that has been kept for a long time, or food that is designed to be of these components that have themselves been decomposed or putrid. Then food consisting of remnants of untouchable things. So this can also to be considered as food that is made from animal flesh, or intoxicants. They are considered to be untouchable things. They are tamasic. Also, as per the scriptures, eating the remnants of others is considered to be tamasic. Now, the exception here is eating the remnants of the devotees, especially the advanced devotees and the Lord. That food, because it's imbued by the spiritual potency, is considered to be in the mode of Shuddha Sattva, beyond the modes. But otherwise, eating the remnants of others is considered to be tamasic. Verse 11. Apalakan shubhiryagyo vididishto yajyate yastavyam evati manaha samadhya sasatvikaha. Of sacrifice, the sacrifice performed according to the directions of the scriptures as a matter of duty by those who desire no reward is of the nature of goodness. So previously Krishna talks about the food in the mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. Now in 3 verses he'll talk about sacrifice in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. So this verse talks about sacrifice in the mode of goodness. And some of the characteristics he says is as a matter of duty, by not desiring any reward. And Prabhupada gives the example of those who go to the temple and they worship because they consider it to be the right thing to do, not because they're motivated that if I worship then you give me something in return. Now an interesting point to note here is that Krishna is saying that sacrifice performed according to the directions of the scriptures. Now Arjuna's question was that what of those people who act not according to the direction of the scriptures? So the answer seems to be in contradiction to the question. But there are 3 ways to understand this. One is that they occasionally or accidentally adhere to the scriptures. So even though they are acting whimsically, for whatever reason, they may adhere to the scriptures. Then those sacrifices are in the mode of goodness. Second is that even though they themselves may not abide by the scriptures, they perform the yajna through those people who abide by the scriptures. So they may engage the priest, and the priest is abiding by the scriptures. So that way they are getting the benefit. And third is, Krishna is basically possibly making the point that sacrifice in the mode of goodness can only exist when there is adherence to the scriptures. Unlike the other activities like eating food, which can accidentally be in the mode of goodness, sacrifice can only be in the mode of goodness when there is adherence to the scriptures. Next verse. Verse 12. Abhisandhayatu phalam dambartam apichevyayat ijjate bharat shrestha tam yagyam vidirajasam. But sacrifice performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride, O chief of the Bharats, you should know to be in the mode of passion. So this is sacrifice that people perform for getting wealth or getting a son, or for ascending to the heavenly planets, or sometimes people perform sacrifice just because of pride, that they perform elaborate opulent sacrifices and people come and praise them. So Krishna says these are in the mode of passion. Verse 13. Vidihinam astranam mantrahinam adakshanam shraddha virahitam yagyam tamasam parichakshate. Any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of scriptures, without distribution of prasadam, spiritual food, without chanting of Vedic hymns and enumerations to the priest, and without faith is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. So Krishna outlines 5 items that contaminate a sacrifice by the mode of ignorance. So whimsical, which means disregard of the scriptural injunctions. So remember when he said mode of goodness was according to scriptural injunctions. So this is the opposite of that. Second is without the distribution of prasadam, because this is an essential component of a bona fide sacrifice. Then mantras. So if there is a disregard of the Vedic injunctions, there will also be a disregard of chanting the proper mantras. And the Vedas are very specific about what mantras to be chanted, when, for whom. Then no remuneration to the priest. So if there is a priest that is performing the yajna, the remuneration must be given ungrudgingly and in proportion to their service. Because the priests are the representative of the Lord and are the media to connect the performer of the sacrifice to the desired result. So if the priest is unhappy, then that connection is broken and the yajna falls into the mode of ignorance. And then finally, faith. So faith is the most important component. So there must be faith in the priest, there must be faith in the process of yajna, and there must be faith in the object of the sacrifice. Otherwise, everything will be useless. Next verse. Verse 14. Devaduja Guru Pragya Pujanam Sochamarjavam Brahmacharyam Ahimsa Cha Shariram Tapa Uchyate. Austerity of the body consists in worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master and superiors like the father, mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. So in 6 verses, Krishna describes the austerities and the modes. The first 4 verses, he talks about the austerity of body, speech, and mind in the mode of goodness. So this is a progressive level of difficulty. Austerity of the body is the easiest, of the speech is more difficult, and of the mind is most difficult. So what is austerity of the body? It is the worship of the devas like Vasus and Rudras, the best of the Brahmanas, the gurus like the mother, father, and teacher, and of the Vipras who know the Vedas. This is from superior to inferior. Then cleanliness. 2 types of Swacham, cleanliness is mentioned. External cleanliness is staying clean, taking regular bath, wearing clean clothes. Internal cleanliness is simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. Then Arjav is sincerity in terms of bodily austerity. That means that one should equally carry out what is prescribed and avoid what is forbidden. So one should be sincere in both senses. Otherwise, duplicitous activities. Brahmacharya means sex life according to scriptural injunctions. So these are the austerities of the body, Sharira. Next verse. Verse 15. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyaya abhayasanam cheva manmayam tapa uchyata. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. So the previous verse talked about the austerity of the body. Now there are 4 aspects that are spoken about the austerity of speech. One is that it is truthful. Truthful means that it is based on authoritative sources. Either it's the word of the Guru, the Sadhu, or the Shastra. The second is that it is pleasing to the hearer. Third is does not cause fear. And fourth is ultimately beneficial to the hearer. So in the Manusmriti, there is this verse that Prabhupada quotes quite often: Satyam bruyat priyam bruyat na bruyat satyam apriyam priyam anaritam na bruyat esha dharma sanatana. That one should say what is true and one should say it sweetly. But one should not say what is true but not sweetly. Nor should one say something sweetly that is not true. This is the wisdom, Esha Dharma Sanatana. So Prabhupada would recommend this for those who were specifically writing in the Back to Godhead. Sometimes they would be very heavy in smashing the opposing viewpoints, and Prabhupada would say Satyam Bruyat Priyam Bruyat. That just because it is true, you should not speak it unless you can speak it sweetly. And just for the sake of speaking sweetly, don't speak something that is untrue. Sometimes silence is better. Next verse. Verse 16. Mana prasada samyutvam maunam vinigraha bhava samshrudhiritteta tapoman samuchyate. And satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. So Krishna had spoken about the austerity initially has spoken of the body, then of the speech. Now he speaks the 5 qualities about the austerities of the mind. So first he says is purity, which means the mind should not be agitated by excessive attachment or aversion. And Prabhupada says that becoming Krishna conscious is the real way to acquire purity of the mind. If one cannot become Krishna conscious, the best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature. Second quality is satisfaction. That it should be, the mind should be without cruelty, desiring the welfare of all living entities. So the more the mind thinks of such sense enjoyment, the more the mind will be dissatisfied. Then third is gravity, which means that the mind should be grave, engaged in the contemplation of the soul, thinking about self-realization. Fourth is self-control, that it should be withdrawn from the sense objects. And fifth is simplicity, that it should be free from deceit in dealing with others and straightforward in all dealings. It should be devoid of duplicity and thinking about the welfare of others. So these are the 5 qualities of the austerities of mind. Verse 17. Shraddhya paraya taptam tapastatrividam narahe afalakangshabhir yukte satvikam parichakshate. This threefold austerity, performed with transcendental faith by men not expecting material benefits but engaged only for the sake of Supreme, is called austerity and goodness. So, what was the threefold austerity? Austerity of the mind, austerity of the speech, and austerity of the body. So, previously Krishna had defined what austerity is. Now he speaks about austerity in the 3 modes of material nature. So here he speaks about the characteristics of austerity in the mode of goodness. So 3 characteristics he describes: that it is performed with faith. Secondly, without expecting any material benefits. And thirdly, that it is for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So this is austerity in the mode of goodness. Verse 18. Satkarmana pujartham tapodammena chevayat kriyate tadya proktam rajasam chalamadhruvam. Penance performed out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship is said to be in the mode of passion. It is neither stable nor permanent. So, the term austerity and penance are actually used interchangeably. So, wherever you see penance, you can assume that it is referring to austerity. So, here Krishna is talking about austerity in the mode of passion. So, austerity that is meant to get praise from others, which means by their words, that is meant to get respect by things like bowing before them, offering obeisances, standing in respect. Then for worship, like washing of the feet, offering arti. For material gains, like getting gifts. And for attracting attention, that I am so great, I am so austere, they are said to be in the mode of passion. And the result is that it is temporary and uncertain. Now, one of the natural consequences of bhakti is that it also gives similar results. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that for a devotee, three things also happen, which is puja, labh, and pratishta: worship, material gains, and fame. And externally, they are very similar to the symptoms of austerity in the mode of passion. But the essential difference is that the devotee does not perform devotional service with the aim of getting these consequences, puja, labh, and pratishta. These are unintended byproducts. For those who are performing austerity in the mode of passion, they explicitly do it for these results, so that they can get praise, they can get worship, they can get material gains. But for the devotee, these are unintended byproducts, and even if they get it, they will simply use it for the service of Krishna and his devotees. Next verse. Verse 19. Moola grahayana tan atmano yat pidaya kriyate tapaha parasyo anadartam va tattamasam udaratam. Penance performed out of foolishness, with self-torture, or to destroy or injure others, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So this is austerity in the mode of ignorance. Foolishness means that without any regard to the scriptural injunctions. Or foolishness also means for material gains. Self-torture is unnecessarily inflicting pain on the body. Some people, they perform excessive fasting or other kinds of pain in the body, or for injuring others. Sometimes people perform austerities to condemn others. So all this is in the mode of ignorance. Verse 20. Dhatavyam iti yaddanam diyate nupakarine deshkale cha patre cha taddanam satvikam smratam. Charity given out of duty without expectation of return at the proper time and place and to a worthy person is considered to be in the mode of goodness. So Krishna has spoken about food in the three modes. He has spoken about austerity in the three modes. Now he speaks about charity in the three modes. This verse talks about charity in the mode of goodness, and Krishna, he brings forth 5 qualities of charity in the mode of goodness. One is that it should be given without expectation of any return. So one should not give charity expecting there should be glorification or fame or praise. It should be given without any expectation of returns. It should be given with full conviction. So one should not give it under pressure or with remorse or regret or grudgingly. Third is that it should be given to a worthy person like a qualified Brahman, a Vaishnava, or a bona fide temple. So the Garud Puran says that only a person who is engaged in learning and austerity has the power to protect the giver and is thus suitable to receiving charity. Fourth is, it should be given at a proper place, means like a place of pilgrimage. And fifth is that it should be given at a proper time or an auspicious time, like a solar or a lunar eclipse, or when the sun moves to a new zodiac signs. Now, proper place and proper time should not be construed in the reverse, that one should say that this is not the proper place and time, so I will not give austerity, but more so in a place of pilgrimage or at an auspicious time, one is recommended to give in austerity. That's why when people go to tirthas, they specifically give in charity because the scriptures recommend that. Similarly, there are certain times of the year, like the eclipse or when the sun moves to a new zodiac sign, they're especially auspicious, and at that time, charity is specifically recommended. But other times also charity can be given, and as long as they're without conviction, without expectation, with full conviction, and to a qualified person, they are considered to be the mode of goodness. Next verse. Verse 21. Yatyu pratyupakarartham phalam uddishya va punaha dayate cha pariklikshtam taddanam rajasam smratam. But charity performed with expectation of some return or with a desire for fruitive results or in a grudging mood is said to be charity in the mode of passion. So, charity that is given with expecting some kind of return. Sometimes people expect charity to be reciprocated. I give you something, you give me something. Or there is some other return, that there should be some praise or some acknowledgement. Then charity with a desire for fruitive results. Like one gives charity so that I may get piety and I get elevated to the heavenly kingdoms. Or in a grudging mood, that they really don't want to give in charity, but they give charity because of the order of the guru or because of the social dictum, they're forced to give charity. That's in the mode of passion. Verse 22. Adesh kale yaddanam aprate bhayascha diyate asat kritam avgyatam tattamasam udaratam. And charity performed at an impure place, at an improper time, to unworthy persons, or without proper attention and respect is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So, improper place is like a place of intoxication or gambling, a slaughterhouse, prostitution. So, these are considered to be unclean places. Then improper time is that without consideration of the whether it is auspicious or inauspicious, akali. Undeserving people are people who are in the mode of passion and ignorance. So it's said that the only people in the mode of goodness are deserving to be given in charity because they can give protection. Not so for the mode of those in the mode of passion and ignorance. Then without proper attention and respect, this is important because what this is saying is that when charity is given, it should be given along with attention and respect. So one should not denigrate the person to whom charity is given. So not only should one should not expect the person to respect them, but on the contrary, the person should give respect to the person that they're giving in charity, both by words and by action. Otherwise, if they give charity that is accompanied by harsh words or accompanied by some insulting action, that charity becomes in the mode of ignorance and is of no benefit to the person who is giving that charity. Next verse. Verse 23. Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho Brahmanastri Vida Smrata Brahmanastena vedascha yagyascha vihita pura. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by the Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So, in this concluding part of the chapters, these concluding 6 verses, 23 to 28, Krishna talks about the transcendental objective that is symbolized by Om Tat Sat. So Om Tat Sat together, they're the sound representation of Krishna. And this verse can be understood in two ways. One is that previously Krishna has spoken about performing austerities in the mode of goodness, passion, ignorance, eating food, or faith. But factually speaking, even the mode of goodness is contaminated because it binds one to the material world. So Krishna presents the way to transcend that material contamination by performing the activities and in conjunction with the Supreme Lord, which is basically moving from Sattva to Shuddha Sattva. Second way to understand is that when one is performing activities that may not be in accordance with the scriptures, by invoking the presence of the Lord, that defect will be compensated. So, by performing activities and devotion, by surrendering the results to the Lord, even if they are not in accordance with the scriptures, they are still going to yield results. So the verse is very reassuring for the devotees, especially in the current day and age, because a lot of the activities that we do, whether it's deity worship or yagyas, not qualified to do them exactly as per the scriptures. But because they are offered to the Lord, they are compensated. Next verse. Verse 24. Tasmadomityudaratya yagyadana tapaha kriyaha pravartante vidanokta satatam brahmavadinam. Therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performance of sacrifice, charity and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the Supreme. So far Krishna has spoken about the three types of austerity, sacrifice, charity, food and faith. So they have been described generally for the human beings. But among the sattvic people, among those who are in the mode of goodness, there is also those who are seeking the Brahman. And they perform these activities in order to achieve the Brahman. And they do so by invoking the word Om. So Om is another representation of Brahman. Now, important to understand that just by saying Om does not mean that one is connected to transcendence. Also means by understanding the significance, realizing the importance of Brahman and acting according to that realization. Next verse. Verse 25. Tadityana visandhaya phalam yagya tapah kriya dhan kriyas cha vivida kriyante mokshakangshabi. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifices, penance and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. So all the activities that Krishna had said earlier on, things like austerity, sacrifice, charity. So initially he said when you chant the word Om, it indicates that the person is offering the results to Brahman. Tat means that the person is desiring freedom from the current material entanglement. So essentially, the person is desiring liberation. So Om and Tat together means that the person is performing the activities towards the Brahman with a desire of being liberated and achieving Brahman. Next verse. Verse 26-27. Sadbhave sadhubhave cha saditya etad paryujyate prashaste karmani tata sachabda partha yujyate yajna tapasya dane cha sthiti saditi chochyate karma chevya tadarthiyam sad itya eva vidiyate. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional service, and it is indicated by the word Sat. The performer of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance and charity which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Lord, O son of Pritha. So these two verses talk about the third component, which is Sat. So Sat essentially means eternal, that which is not destroyed. Asat means temporary and Sat means eternal. So we see that Sat is used twice. The first is in conjunction with Karmevacha, which means referring to the activities of the performer. And the second usage is with conjunction with Tadarthyam, which means for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. So what has been established? That the activities that are performed for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord are eternal, both for the performer and for the objective also. So the injunction in the last set of verses is that one should remember the three names Om Tat Sat in order to fix one's consciousness on the Supreme Lord. By this, one will transcend the material contamination and one will also compensate for any deficiencies. So because these activities are directly related to devotional service, they automatically come in the mode of pure goodness. So after having talked in details about the three modes, Krishna is essentially asking us to transcend the modes and enter into the stage of devotional service. Verse 28. Ashadhaya hutam datam tapastaptam kritam chayat asad ityuchyate partha nacha tat pretyano iha. Anything done as sacrifice, charity or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. So this is the last verse in the chapter, and Krishna gives a succinct answer to the question that Arjuna asked at the beginning. And in doing so, he also summarizes the instruction that he has given in the chapter. So Arjuna had asked the position of those who have faith but do not follow the scriptures. Now faith in the scriptures is equivalent to faith in Krishna, because Krishna speaks in the scriptures and the scriptures speak about Krishna. So any and all activities that are executed without faith in the scriptures are asat. They are based on one's own swabhav. So they are useless in this life because they are condemned by saintly people, and they are useless in the next life because they are condemned by Krishna. Essentially they are condemned because they are contaminated by the modes which will eventually pull them down. Now Krishna says that so better than acting without scripture injunction is to act with scriptural injunctions. And for those who are acting with scriptural injunctions, the best is to act in proper consciousness, which is in the Om Tat Sat consciousness, which establishes one's intent to perform activities for the pleasure of Krishna only. So they become spiritual activities which are sat or permanent, as opposed to material activities which are impermanent. So this is the conclusion of the chapter, that one should direct the energies not through the gradual process of becoming elevated on the tree of the material world by gradually transmigrating like a karmkandi, but one should, by the mercy of the spiritual master, directly understand the purpose of gradual elevation and take the path of direct and expedient elevation by the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and simultaneously cut the attachment to this tree and also go back to Godhead. So that brings us to the end of the chapter. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.